Hello, everyone. This is recording number 5 for a series on how to write a paper for a class in philosophy. In the first 4 recordings, we talked about preparatory steps, how to find a good topic, how to structure your paper, and so on. But now you're writing, and you encounter an additional challenge. In philosophy, every technical term needs to be introduced. And that is a tough requirement, not only because it can seem daunting, how to explain this or that term, but also because there seem to be a lot of technical terms. So what can you do? To get us started, let me introduce an example. Let's say you want to use the term belief. Now, initially you may think you want to use the word belief, where that just means you take that to be a word we use in everyday language that we are all familiar with. But then you realize that belief is also a technical term in philosophy. There are any number of approaches to belief, different frameworks, different notions of belief, also in historical authors. So it is going to be a technical term for the purposes of writing a paper in philosophy, and you need to introduce it. And now it can seem that you find yourself, as it were, in a Socratic dialogue where you want to say something that you think is perfectly harmless. You want to say something where you use the word belief. And along comes Socrates and says, ha, that is something I always wanted to know. What are beliefs? And now you are at a loss and you don't want to find yourself in that position. So here are 3 recommendations for how to deal with the need to introduce technical terms. My first recommendation is that you cut down dramatically on technical terms. As much as possible, just use terms from everyday talk. If, for example, nothing in your paper hangs on any particular notion of belief, just don't use that word. Talk about a view that someone holds or something else that is not also a philosophical term. Second recommendation. The readings that you studied in class are your greatest resource. Return to them. And often you will find that one of the authors in the discussion to which you want to contribute with your paper, in fact, offers a gloss or brief sketch of how they are going to use the notion of belief. And it is perfectly all right if you say in your paper, for the purposes of this paper, I will take the notion of belief in the way in which it is used in such and such a contribution. Now, here's my third recommendation. Suppose you go back to the readings you studied in class and you notice that, in fact, the notion of belief does not come up. And that can be a surprise because belief and some other terms are so familiar to us and so basic to philosophy today that we can somehow just forget that not everyone uses these terms. So suppose you notice the absence of the term and you ask yourself, well, is there somehow maybe a nearby term? And you observe that an author speaks about opinions or judgments. That is an occasion for you to ask yourself what the difference might be. Is there maybe a philosophically interesting difference between belief and opinion or belief and judgment or whatever it might be? For the most part, it is a good idea to stick to the philosophical vocabulary of the debate to which you want to contribute. However, if you think that philosophically something hangs on you introducing an additional term that is not already part of that framework, then that goes beyond just introducing a term, then that deserves an additional section in your paper.